in Germany. Oh, hello and welcome to Oschersleben in Germany. I was in full flow there and somebody hadn't opened my microphone. You're very welcome to the 5th race weekend of TCR Europe 2019 and our expanded coverage of rounds 9 and 10 of the series. If you were with us yesterday for the 2 free practice sessions, you will have seen, first of all, Santiago Urrutia, quickest in free practice 1, and then Dan Lloyd, quickest in free practice 2. So far, the Hyundais have been there or thereabouts, but who knows whether there's a little bit of sandbagging going on and they'll show their true colours today. So quite a few changes to tell you about. Some you will have been aware of if you were with us yesterday. If you weren't, then I'll try and bring you up to speed. If you were, then apologies if I repeat myself. But the biggest news I think of today is that we were expecting a wet morning, supposed to be raining overnight, and this morning's qualifying session was, we thought, going to be wet. Very much not so. Look at that blue sky, 18 degrees air temperature, dry track. And so we did have a thunderstorm last night. We had one the night before. We thought that we might get very heavy rain overnight, but that's clearly not materialised. So a dry qualifying, the usual qualifying session, which of course normally we don't live stream. So this is a bonus for us this weekend, and the feedback we've had so far is that you're enjoying our expanded coverage of TCR Europe. Fingers crossed we can do it at some point in the future, but we won't make any promises. The usual live coverage, though, of our 2 races will happen later on. One race today at 1:40, which is round 9 of the series, and then round 10 tomorrow at 1:30. So 1:40 today, 1:30 Central European time tomorrow, and that then gets us very much underway for rounds 9 and 10, but we've got the small matter of qualifying first. 2 stages. If you've not watched qualifying of any of the TCR events before, we used to live stream TCR International. 20-minute Q1, top 12 go through to Q2, and then it's the top 10 reversed that will make the grid for race 2 tomorrow. There are the target competition cars lining up. We'll run through some of the runners and riders and some of the changes that we have for you this weekend as we go through the session. A couple of drivers not appearing, unfortunately, here at Oschersleben this weekend. Among them, Stian Paulsen. I suspect Stian is watching at home. So, Stian, if you're watching, hello. I'm really sorry that you're not here. Fingers crossed we will see Stian and the Cupra out. Maybe not at the next round in Barcelona in September, but hopefully at the final round in Monza in October. One of the characters of TCR, and it's a great shame that he's not here. Also not here, Danny Nage, a late decision, I think, from Danny to part company with Mira Racing, and it certainly seems a little raw from the team side talking to them. And so Danny Nage replaced at last minute by another young Hungarian driver, Zsolt Szabo. I suspect we'll see him. He did pretty well yesterday in free practice, coming to terms with the car. But there is the man that currently leads the Drivers' Series, Josh Files, double victor already this year, and knows Oschersleben because you'll recall that he is a double TCR Germany champion, likes Oschersleben, and is quite comfortable here. Bit of a problem yesterday. There's a new curb that's gone in over the winter, so we understand, at the chicane at turn 9. Several cars hitting that curb quite heavily yesterday, including Files. And we also saw several cars stopping or coming into the pits with broken radiators. David Kajaya had his changed after free practice 1. And we saw Maxime Potty stop on track with fluid pouring from the underneath of the Volkswagen in FP2. And we also saw Santiago Urrutia, quickest in FP1, and there he is, in fact, at the bottom of your screen, the car 55, the Audi WRT, the matte grey Audi of Santiago Urrutia, caused the second red flag in FP2, stopped on track. We didn't know why. It turned out that he damaged the radiator. A warning light came on. The team told him to switch off, and basically stranded in the middle of the track. Out came the red flags, session was over. But the car, as you can see now, fully sorted, as are, I think, all of the others. So we have 28 cars for you of the original 29 that were on the entry lists published earlier in the week. The other non-starter, the other car to be withdrawn ahead of the weekend, sadly, the Renault Megane of John Filippi. So with Alex Morgan already having switched from the Renault to a Cupra, the car in which he finished third last time out at the Red Bull Ring 3 weeks ago. Unfortunately, we're one car brand down completely. No Renault Meganes here. We'll keep our fingers crossed that the Vukovic team can continue with the development work, and we will hopefully see the Renault Megane reappear before the end of the year. Now, that's one of the changes. I'm sure you're aware from events following round 2 at the Red Bull Ring, Dusan Borkovic will play no further part in this year's series, and so his place at target competition taken by the young Austrian driver Dominik Baumann. Seriously quick here yesterday in free practice, and even though he's done most of his running in GT3 cars, predominantly Mercedes and BMW, one of the teams he drove for is based just down the road, and so he's very familiar with Oschersleben. And that certainly came to the fore yesterday. Some decent times in the 2 free practice sessions from Dominik Baumann. So session due to start, 20-minute Q1 will start in just under a minute's time, something like 45 seconds time. Luca Engstler, bit of a surprise from him. Another TCR Germany regular, of course. Has never won the title, but is the reigning TCR Middle East, the TCR Asia champion. And so Luca Engstler, after his win in race 2 in the Red Bull Ring, is in 2nd place in the driver's standings. Really could do with a victory here in Oschersleben this weekend. Something like 15 seconds then before the green lights come on. And we'll be underway for the first of this session. There is Zsolt Szabo in the Mira Hyundai. We'll hopefully be talking about him as the session goes on. Green lights on then, 20 minutes we have on this first stage of qualifying, and the usual rush to get out of the pit lane. And the car I'm watching for particularly is the Zengo Cupra of Tamas Tenka, which stopped on track yesterday, caused the first of the red flags in free practice 2. That car was still being worked on this morning. And so, fingers crossed, yes, that looks like it at the back of the field there, coming down the pit lane. And indeed, there it is. Tamas Tenka then and the Zengo team having worked their magic and got the car back out. I don't know how bad the damage was. It didn't look that bad yesterday. But the marshals had all sorts of problems recovering the car because of steering damage, possible suspension damage. So that's why the red flags came out. Nelson Ponciatici there in the M Racing Hyundai. Brilliant drive in race 2 in Red Bull Ring. Stalled on the grid, so had to start right from the back of the field, carved his way through to finish 4th. I suspect Dusan Borkovic will have something to say about that. Certainly had enough to say at the time. But the stewards took no action, and of course the incident was then overshadowed by what happened in the paddock immediately following race 2. So Josh Files then, target competition, leading the drivers' standings by 194 points from Engstler on 158, but as we've already seen, that means nothing. It can all be turned on its head, depending on if whether a driver has a miserable race weekend, as indeed Files had at Spa. Files the winner in race 1 in Hockenheim and also race 1 at the Red Bull Ring. Just a word about this circuit. We've been here several times before with TCR. We've been twice for TCR International in 2016 and 2017. 2017 particularly saw Gianni Morbidelli take a complete clean sweep, 55 points, 5 points for pole position, and then won both races, including beating Files' teammate this year, Matto Homola, who was on course in race 2 to record the first race victory for the Opel Astra in TCR International. But 2 corners from home, just going up towards turn 13, Gianni Morbidelli in the West Coast Racing Volkswagen got past and took the win, and a bitterly disappointed Matto Homola had to settle for 2nd place. That's the last time we were here with TCR International, but of course TCR Germany races here regularly. This being, when it was built, the 4th permanent circuit in Germany after the the Nürburgring, Hockenheim and Sachsenring. And in fact, Oschersleben celebrated its 22nd birthday just last week, opened on the 25th of July 1997. So a belated happy birthday to Oschersleben. So Files comes in then, and Gilles Magnus, also a race winner of course, won in Spa in race 1 on his home turf. What can the Audis do this weekend? We've already seen that Santiago Urrutia was quick. And we're lapping in 1:31, 1:32. Magnus does a 1:30 though, the first driver to break the 1:31 barrier so far this weekend. Gilles Magnus quickest so far then with a 1:30.901. Second is Pontiatisi, we saw earlier, 1:31.331. Julien Brichet, winner of the second race in the first 3 rounds of the series. Coronel goes quickest. So Tom Coronel, there he is, car number 50, the Honda. Tom Coronel, an extremely busy man this year, announced this week that he's competing in rallycross as well as in WTCR and TCR Europe. Does like being busy, does Tom, does like having his calendar filled. So Coronel then with a 1:30.873, quickest so far from Magnus, Pontiatisi, Brichet, Matto Homola, Jimmy Claret, Nathan Biel, Teddy Claret, Dominic Baumann, Luca Filippi, David Kajaya, Abdullah Ali Al-Khelaifi, who returns to the series after missing the Red Bull Ring, and Martin Rieber. But Rieber not a competitive time, a 1:47. And indeed, Kajaya and Al-Khelaifi, 1:36. So those times will definitely come down as Urrutia heads out. Now, on the face of it, it would be a Honda or an Audi potentially on pole, but as I said earlier, we don't quite know what the Hyundais were up to yesterday. They tend often not to be quickest in free practice and then bang in the times in qualifying, and that may well be what happens again today. There is Pontiatisi, there is Homola. Pontiatisi at the moment P3 with a 1:31.331. Martin Rieber in the Brutal Fish Honda in the barriers. What's that going to do? And is he able to extricate himself from the gravel? Or will he need recovery? The clock, though, relentlessly ticking down. There are yellow flags in the area of turn 7, that long hairpin right. So that's going to cause issues with sector times being important. Lloyd improves up to 19th, but as you can see on the left of your screen, the top 12 are in black, and from 13 downwards in grey. Thankfully, Rieber gets back underway, so we won't need any intervention while he's recovered. So the yellow flags should be removed very shortly, and we will be fully green throughout the course. 13.5 minutes then remaining. Tom Coronel, quickest so far with a 1:30.873. Then Gilles Magnus, Nelson Pontiatisi, David Kajaya, Julien Brichet, Matto Homola, Nathan Biel, Jimmy Claret, Teddy Claret, Abdullah Ali Al-Khelaifi, Dominic Baumann, Luca Filippi, and Martin Rieber. Rieber will be heading into the pits. No competitive times as yet for Alex Morgan, Comte, Engschler, Files, Davidovsky, the 2 Beckmans, in fact, Andreas and Jessica. There is Andreas, who went quickest of all in Sector 1, his best Sector 2 time. What will Andreas Beckman do? Improves to P13, not good enough though, as Maxime Potty pops in a time of P7 with a 1:32.271. And Dan Lloyd goes quickest of all. So Dan Lloyd, fastest so far, 1:38.68. So Hondas 1 and 2 at the moment in this first stage of qualifying. Dan Lloyd ahead of Tom Coronel. And just looking down the order, Josh Files is on a flyer. There is Lloyd in the 1-2-3 Brutal Fish Honda. Quickest in FP2, third quickest in FP1, so Lloyd is there or thereabouts. And after being quick in free practice in the Red Bull Ring, pipped in qualifying by Luca Filippi, so Lloyd has a bit of a point to prove this weekend. Josh Files goes P3, that's more like it. That's what we were expecting from Josh Files. So Files then also beats the 131 barrier, as does Santiago Urrutia. He goes P1 with a 138.67, 1/1000th of a second quicker than Dan Lloyd. So the smallest possible margin. Santiago Urrutia, quickest so far in this session in the Audi from the two Hondas of Dan Lloyd and Tom Coronel. Then it's Files in the leading Hyundai, Magnus in an Audi, Luca Enschler, Hyundai, Ponziatisi in another Hyundai, then Gianni Morbidelli. And indeed, as I say that, Andreas Beckmann pops in a P6 time, 1:31 exactly. So that's another Hyundai. Morbidelli drops to 9th. Viktor Davidovsky in the Honda. And on the timing screen, I'm told that Luca Enschler is under investigation for an unsafe release in the pit lane. That's Ollie Kangas, the number 46 West Coast Racing Volkswagen, getting it all wrong. That's Aurelien Comte in the DG Sport Competition car. Comte at the moment P17. Still half of this 20-minute session remaining though. Lloyd in the pits. Magnus just leaving the pits. Enschler's in the pits. Ponziatisi's just gone back out. Kajaya's in the pits. Currently Kajaya in 12th place, and so the last of the 12 drivers that will go through to Q2, but we still have just over 10 minutes of this session remaining, so a lot can still happen. There is Homola, currently P18. Just set his best Sector 1 time. And there on the timing screen you can see Brichet also set his best Sector 1 time and then blew it in Sector 2. Homola though, green in both first sectors, 2/10, just over 2/10 up. And so Homola on course to improve from P18, comes up to the final turn, turn 14, the right-hander that turns back onto the start-finish straight. There is Homola in the back of your shot. What can he do? And he goes P10. So that'll do nicely. Although I don't think he can relax as yet, not with a little over 9 minutes of the session remaining. He'll need to do better than that 1:31.426. At the moment, the top 13 cars covered by just a whisker over 1 second. Kajaya drops out of the top 12. And Kajaya, I think there were certainly a few questions as to whether he would be here because of budget issues. I'm pleased to see he's here, as are his many, many fans around the world from Georgia. And Baumann goes P10. Dominic Baumann in the 58 target competition Hyundai. 10th quickest so far. In fact, 11th quickest so far, because Luca Filippi goes P9. So Homola, already on the edge of the drop, has now dropped to P12 already. But nobody is touching Santiago Urrutia at the moment. Gilles Magnus, though, worth keeping an eye on. Magnus has just gone purple in Sector 1. There is Nathan Biel's time on the bottom of your screen. Biel at the moment is P21. There he is, and I think just getting slightly crossed up coming out of that right-hander. There is Biel coming around turn 14. There he is in the back of your shot. What can Biel do? Now, indeed, that's where he got it wrong. Lost a couple of seconds, nearly 3 seconds, in fact, compared to Sector 2. And so Biel blows it as Gilles Magnus goes quickest now. Gilles Magnus in the other Audi, only 2 Audis, and they're currently first and second. Gilles Magnus P1, Santiago Urrutia P2. And we just saw Gilles Magnus's teammate, Maxime Potti, Santiago Urrutia's teammate, Maxime Potti, leave the pit lane. The WRT team running 1 Audi and 1 Volkswagen, whereas Magnus is being run by the Come To You team with the Belgian junior team colours. Aurelien Comte then currently P21. quickest in his best sector time in Sector 1 so far. A few splashes of green on the timing screens. So Dan Lloyd just done his best Sector 1 time, as has Coronel. Lloyd has also just gone purple in Sector 2. So he's comfortable in P3 at the moment, but he's doesn't seem to be settling for that, does Dan Lloyd. So down the start-finish straight for Aurélien Comte. Green in Sector 1, green in Sector 2. And crosses the finish line and improves to P14. It's not enough for Aurélien Comte. Dan Lloyd, meanwhile, has gone back to the top of the timesheet. Dan Lloyd quickest then, with a whisker over 6 minutes of this session remaining. Then a 5-minute break, remember, before the top 12 from this session go through to Q2. And as things currently stand, the 12 going through will be Lloyd, Magnus, Urrutia, that man Tom Coronel. Ponciatici has just gone P2. So as you were, Lloyd, Ponciatici, Magnus, Urrutia, Coronel, Files, Beckman, Andreas, Luca Engstler, Alex Morgan, Luca Filippi, Dominic Baumann, and Matto Homola are the top 12. And there is David Kajaya, or there was David Kajaya, I should say. There is Andreas Beckman. Now, Andreas and Jessica Beckman both tested here during the winter. They, in fact, tested at every circuit that TCR Europe visits this year. And having spoken to them and their dad yesterday, they're both very confident here. The test went very well, and they're very optimistic of a good result here in Germany. So of the top 12, 5, in fact, of the top 10, 5 cars are in the pits. Filippi's in, Luca Engstler is in, Coronel's in, Urrutia and Magnus both in. And indeed, Jessica Beckman, I mentioned her a moment ago, she goes P10, and so nudges Matto Homola, her teammate, out of the top 12. So both the Beckmans at the moment in the top 10. Andreas P7, Jessica P10. Also there from Target are Josh Files P6 and Dominic Baumann P12. Baumann's just on an outlap, and so will improve. Dan Lloyd is in the pits. Now, we mentioned Gianni Morbidelli. Obviously had a fantastic weekend here back in 2017, and Morbidelli is on a charge. Really could do with salvaging something for the West Coast team. Gianni Morbidelli, currently P14, heads for the line and improves. Gianni Morbidelli goes quickest of all, and that is just the kind of tonic that West Coast Racing needed. They were a little down yesterday, saying, yes, okay, we did well the last time we came here with TCR International, but the car is heavy and we don't quite know, what we can do. Oh, as Julien Brichet plows through not only the runoff area at the outside of that right-hander, but also the grass beyond the rumble strip. And Beckman has gone quickest of all. Andreas, that is. So Andreas Beckman, quickest so far, from Gianni Morbidelli, from Dan Lloyd, Nelson Ponciatici, Gilles Magnus, Alex Morgan now P6. Urrutia has dropped to 7th. Coronel is now 8th, Josh Files 9th, Luca Engstler 10th, Jessica Beckman 11th, and Luca Filippi 12th. So that means Dominic Baumann has dropped out of the top 12. What can Brichet do? Currently 21st. And that's where he lost it. So there's the rumble strip, then there's the green, where the potential of track limits problems could come in, although there is only one spot on this circuit where track limits are an issue, and that's going through the chicane at turn 9, and there is a big tyre pack there, and Brichet's backed right off. He knows his chance of improving on this lap anyway has gone. So a few anxious faces in the pits, I dare say. So below our top 12, not going through currently, are Matto Homola, and that's a massive slide from Julien Brichet. That's why he backed off. So unlikely for Brichet to proceed through into Q2, currently 21st. And the others not going through, as I mentioned, Homola, Filippi, Comte, Davidovsky, Jimmy Claret, Szabo, Kajaya, Potty, Brichet, Kangas, Claret, Teddy, Biel, Al-Khelaifi, Tenka, Reba, and Poussier, we've not mentioned yet. Sylvain Poussier from France is in the number 77 car, the Team Claret car that we've already seen in the hands of Gilles Colombani and Stéphane Vontaja so far this year. So the third different driver in that car, and Poussier, 28th out of 28 so far. And Dominic Baumann has popped himself back into the top 12. Dominic Baumann now P4. And this is Maxime Potty, stopped on track yesterday with a broken radiator. Several drivers having a similar kind of problem. Potty currently 20th, heads for the line. Doesn't improve. So Maxime Potty doesn't look as though he'll make the cut, although he has time for one more lap. Josh Files electing to sit and wait things out. Josh Files currently P10. But of course this is only, I say only Q1. As long as you're in the top 12, that's all that matters in this session. Into the final 30 seconds then as Luca Filippi runs wide. Luca Filippi currently P14, so he won't improve. So no chance of a repeat for that pole position we saw in the Red Bull Ring 3 weeks ago. And this is the moment, and that's turn 1. We talked about it yesterday. Turn 1, in fact, has two layouts, two alternatives. There's a very square left-hander, which we used, I think, the first time we came here with TCR International, but it caused all sorts of problems, and so there's an easier, more sweeping version which they're using this weekend, which shouldn't cause so many problems, although it does mean that instead of braking hard after the rundown from the start line for the square left-hander, it just means that it's a quicker left-hander at turn 1, then onto the brakes for the long right-hander at turn 2. So Beckman, Morbidelli, Lloyd and Baumann all in the pits, as is Alex Morgan and Josh Files. And the checkered flag already having been taken by Matto Homola, Nathan Biel, Aurélien Comte, Maxime Potty, Jolt Szabo, Julien Brichet, and Sylvain Poussier. So there are a couple of splashes of green further down the timing screens, but at the risk of tempting fate, don't think they're going to have any effect on the top 12. So then, let's run through the top 12 for you, as they're now into the 5-minute break between the two qualifying sessions. Andreas Beckman, quickest then in Q1, ahead of Nelson Ponciatici and Gianni Morbidelli. So Hyundai's 1 and 2. Morbidelli P3 in a Volkswagen, then Dan Lloyd in a Honda. Dominic Baumann, Hyundai. Gilles Magnus, Audi. Alex Morgan, Cupra. Santiago Urrutia, Audi. Tom Coronel, Honda. Josh Files, Hyundai. Luca Engstler in a Hyundai, and Jessica Beckman in a Hyundai. So that's the way things look then. And everybody now has either taken the checkered flag or is in the pits. So that's your top 12 going through as a frustrated Julien Brichet heads back around. So both Beckmans then bookending the top 12. Andreas P1, Jessica P12. They both go through to Q2. And so the full list going through then. Andreas Beckman, Ponciatici, Morbidelli, Lloyd, Baumann, Magnus, Morgan, Urrutia, Coronel, Files, Engstler, and Jessica Beckman. And I was saying earlier that a handful of drivers had broken the 131 barrier. In fact, the top 10 are all within a whisker over 8/10 of each other. All of the top 10 have broken that 131 barrier, with Beckman doing a 130.078 down to Josh Files, who's done a 130.882. So a few unhappy drivers and teams at the end of Q1. Frustration at not having gone 2, but let's just confirm the Results from Q1 for you. Andreas Beckmann in the Hyundai target competition, 1:30.078, quickest of all. Ponciatici, Morbidelli, Lloyd, Baumann, Magnus, Morgan, Urrutia, Coronel, Files, Engstler and Jessica Beckmann rounding off the top 12. Those are the 12 that'll go through. And a note on my timing screen that Q2 has been delayed for 5 minutes because of track sweeping. So the drivers not going through to Q2 then. Homola, Luca Filippi, no John Filippi, of course. Biel, Comte, Davidovsky, Kajaya, excuse me, Potty, Jimmy Claret, who is 12th. And then it's Szabo, Brichet, Kangas, Claret, Al Khalifi, Tenka, Poussier, and Reba. So one or two surprises. I wasn't sure about whether Szabo could go through with the experience of the Mira team behind him, but indeed, Szabo 1:31.819, 1.7 seconds off the time set by Andreas Beckmann. And Julien Brichet, in fact, only completed 2 laps. 1:31.985, the best time he could manage. Okay, let's see just how disappointed Mato Homola is at P13. He's with Alfredo Filippone.
Mato Homola, tell us about your session. Disappointed?
Yeah, well, I don't know what to say. I did my best. I made small mistakes. We had a little bit of the understeer, but it's not so much. And yeah, I'm P13, so it's really disappointed for me. But yeah, well, I don't know what to say. We need to see the data, what's wrong. But yeah, for tomorrow, I'll try my best.
Thank you.
Mato Homola, and you can sense the disappointment. Our man in the pit lane this weekend, Alfredo, will be chatting to our pole sitter in something like 15 minutes' time. If you're just joining us, you're very welcome. We are at Oschersleben in Germany this weekend for rounds 9 and 10 of TCR Europe. And for a change, we're able to live stream every session. So we streamed FP1 and FP2 yesterday, qualifying today, and then both races live streamed as usual. And race 1 will be today at 1:40 Central European time. Tomorrow, race 2 at 1:30. So lunchtime races both days. And then, of course, after this weekend, we've, I think, the longest gap of the year, 7 weeks until the penultimate round of the series, which is at Barcelona. That is over the weekend of September the 21st and 22nd. And then a month after that, it's the final round at Monza in Italy. And that will round off the second running of TCR Europe in its current form. You'll remember that there were different formats. Let's head back down to the pit lane, then ahead of Q2. Let's hear from Maxime Potty, who's with Alfredo.
Maxime Potty, it didn't work as you expected, eh?
Oh yes, it's not the good experience in the Q1 because it's not good in the good place, but it's the life.
What was wrong?
Not good, not good.
The car?
Yes, I'm very difficult with the car, but yeah, I don't know. I see with Elliot for today.
Thank you.
Elliot there being Elliot Hoffet, the engineer from the team. But we saw Maxime stopped on track yesterday with fluid pouring from the front of the car. And as I said earlier, several drivers breaking radiators yesterday. And apparently the culprit is that new curb in the chicane. And we saw problems for Potty, problems for Urrutia, problems for Files. Not so much radiator related, but he actually thumped the subframe of the car, which knocked the steering out of line, and the car couldn't really be fixed in time for free practice 2, excuse me. And so the target competition team fixed it overnight. Luca Engstler is competing. I'm just being told in my headphones that we're talking to Luca's dad down in the pit lane.
Franz Engstler, nice to see you. As a spectator, or?
No, I'm here to support a little bit Luca. It's our home race, so it's always a pleasure to come here to Oschersleben and to join the TCR Europe. It's really a great championship. So I cross the finger for Luca, and we do our best.
It's very difficult. The level is high competition, very tight. How you see things?
Of course, it's a Europe Championship. That is the image what we need. We need a high competition. We need really professional teams, professional driver. That is what the spectators will see, and yeah, we are on the right way.
Not missing to be out there?
No. At the moment, I'm really busy, and I enjoy really to have the weekend with my son, and it's really I enjoy it really much.
Thank you. Danke.
Good to see Franz Engstler. He knows what it's like to win here at Oschersleben because he took victory in the World Touring Car Championship in a BMW, I think, 2011, possibly, if my memory serves me correctly. But Franz, the father of Luca Engstler, and Luca Engstler through to Q2, much to his dad's delight. And there is the body language from Maxime Potti, and that is Elliott with his back to us in the white shirt. So then, we're under a minute away from the start of Q2. The car's just moving forward. Race director Tony Whittaker yesterday at the driver's briefing very clear that cars should not be in the fast lane. They should be in the working lane until the green light comes on at the start of every session. And so just a little bit of gamesmanship. They move the cars forward, so they're just nudging the line that separates the working lane from the fast lane. You can see there. And engineers and mechanics just telling their drivers when it's safe to go. 20 seconds then until we start this second stage of qualifying. 12 drivers having gone through. I'll just run through them very briefly for you again before the lights go green. Alex Morgan, Luca Engstler, Josh Files, Nelson Ponciartisi, Gilles Magnus, Andreas Beckmann, Jessica Beckmann, Gianni Morbidelli, Tom Coronel, Santiago Urrutia, Dominic Baumann, and Dan Lloyd. There they go. The lights go green. 10 minutes then. This frantic thrash that is Q2. And one of the target cars needing a push away. And I think potentially that was Luca Engstler just needing a helping hand as Alex Morgan is at the back of that train of 12 cars leaving the pit lane. We've not seen much of Alex so far. We saw a lot more of him in the Red Bull Ring 3 weeks ago. Alex Morgan having made the switch from the Renault to the Cupra. And that's a race-by-race deal, as I understand. The car is being run by Wolf Power, but it is Mike Halder's car from TCR Germany, the car in which Mike finished second 2 years ago in the series, and it's also been driven by Mike's sister Michelle, but both the Halders having switched now to Honda machinery, and so that car very much available, and Alex Morgan making very good use of it, you have to say, third at the Red Bull Ring, and now through to Q2 here in Oschersleben. So Gilles Magnus, what can he do? Will this be an Audi benefit? Will it be a Hyundai at the top of the timesheets? Or will it be Dan Lloyd who finally takes that pole position that we thought might happen 3 weeks ago? And the top 12 very much dominated by Hyundais. There is in fact only the one Cupra, that of Alex Morgan. Engstler, Files, Ponciartisi, both the Beckmans, and Baumann in Hyundais, and then Tom Coronel, Dan Lloyd in Hondas, and Gilles Magnus and Santiago Urrutia in Audis, and Gianni Morbidelli, the sole Volkswagen driver in the West Coast car. So what can Josh Files do then? He starts his first flying lap. And that's Team Claret, the two brothers, Jimmy and Teddy. And as I mentioned earlier, Sylvain Poussier in the third of the Team Claret Peugeots this weekend. None of the Peugeots, unfortunately, having made it through to Q2. And already an incident. I was going to say that we're going to watch Josh, and that was Luca Engstler getting it wrong. And that was coming out of turn one, into the right-hander at turn two. So not such good news for Luca Engstler. potentially good news for Josh Files. And we are indeed following Josh around this lap of the Oschersleben circuit. What can Files do in this first flying lap of the second stage of qualifying? Around turn 14 then he heads for the timing line, and we are looking for a 1:30, 1:31 along those lines. Files then does a 1:31, 1:93, so a second or so off the pace, and indeed Andreas Beckmann already goes quicker, as does Baumann. So Andreas Beckmann does a 1:30, 3:34. Urrutia has now done a 1:30, 6:12. Baumann a 1:30, 7:02, and Gilles Magnus has done a 1:30, 6:54. So a Hyundai from two Audis, and indeed, by the time I say it, it's already been superseded. Dan Lloyd now P2 ahead of Urrutia. Lloyd's done a 1:30, 5:14. So 18 hundredths of a second slower than Andreas Beckmann. So far then it's Beckmann, Lloyd, Urrutia, Pontiatisi, Magnus, Baumann, Coronel, Jessica Beckmann and Josh Files. Alex Morgan's done a 1:31, 7:16. And Luca Engstler and Gianni Morbidelli yet to set decent times, and both in fact in the pits. And Magnus just getting the corner wrong, running across the rumble strips and just clipping the grass at the exit. That's the man on provisional pole at the moment. Andreas Beckmann peels off and heads for the pits. And we're looking for green sectors. Hyundai, Honda, Audi is how the top three look at the moment. Beckmann from Lloyd from Urrutia. Jessica Beckmann has just done a 1:31.024 in P8. And of the top 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 are now in the pits. So a stream of cars coming in. Beckmann is in, Urrutia is in, Magnus is in, Baumann is in, Files is in, as are Luca Engstler and Gianni Morbidelli, who I mentioned earlier. I said it was a short, sharp thrash, a sprint, this Q2. We're already more than halfway through the session. And in fact, all but two cars now in the pits. Alex Morgan is still out, as is Jessica Beckmann. And there is Jessica Beckmann now, I think one of only two cars circulating. I think Alex Morgan may be coming in. Jessica Beckmann having done a 1:31.024 on this lap, her best sector 1, but indeed doesn't improve. That was a 1:30. In fact, her last lap was her best lap, a 1:31.024. The cars start heading out then for the second assault at this time. Both the Audis heading out virtually together, although, as we were saying yesterday in free practice, slipstreaming not really an issue here. It's a long start-finish straight at Oschersleben. There is a relatively long back straight, but it's not anything like, for example, the Salzburg Ring, where you've got long straights, and drafting, slipstreaming is absolutely vital. Jessica Beckmann now is in. Andreas, her brother, is on his out lap, as is Urrutia, as are Urrutia, Pontiatisi, Magnus, Baumann, Coronel and Files. Coronel just picks his way past Urrutia. I think Alex Morgan has a problem. We've not seen Morgan for a while. The timing screen is saying that he's out on track, but the numbers just don't seem to make sense. So if the guys in the truck are listening, if you can possibly look for Alex Morgan in the white Cupra. It doesn't appear to be in the pits unless he has a problem with his transponder. No, indeed, thank you for that. There is Alex Morgan parked up. and being recovered at the moment. So not great news, I'm afraid, for Alex Morgan, although he is currently 10th. So if things were to stay as they are, and that's a big if, Alex Morgan would start race 2 from pole tomorrow. But there's the small matter of Luca Engstler and Gianni Morbidelli, who are still in the pits at the moment as the clock is steadily ticking down. And so with a lap time of around 1:40 or so for an outlap, I'm actually wondering whether Engstler and Morbidelli will set a competitive time, whether they have enough time to get out there. And indeed, no, because it's now gone beyond 1.5 minutes left on the timing. So Andreas Beckmann has just gone purple in Sector 1. Files has just gone green in Sector 1. So it does look as though Alex Morgan, despite the fact that he's being recovered from the track after a problem, Alex Morgan, it looks as though he will start race 2 tomorrow from pole. Andreas Beckmann, though, looks at the moment as though he's going to start race 1 from pole later today. He's gone purple in Sector 1, purple in Sector 2. Coronel has stopped. So whether he's pulled off or whether he's spun off, we may well find out in a moment. But Tom Coronel, currently P7, has pulled up. Josh Files, what will he do? Green in Sector 1 and 2. He will improve. No, he doesn't. That's the commentator's curse. Lost it all in P3, in Sector 3, excuse me. So Josh Files currently 9th. And indeed, Andreas Beckmann improves. Now down to a 1:30.017. So just a whisker over beating the 1:30 lap time. And he's actually half a second or thereabouts. Oh, in fact, just as I say that, Santiago Urrutia, there he is, goes P2 and is just under 0.4 of a second slower than Andreas Beckmann. So at the moment, Beckmann for Hyundai on provisional pole, Santiago Urrutia in the Audi will be alongside him. Nelson Ponciatici is the first to take the checkered flag, so he'll be P3 currently. Dan Lloyd has just gone green in Sector 2. Then Magnus, Baumann, Coronel, Jessica Beckmann, Josh Files and Alex Morgan. And neither Luca Engstler nor Gianni Morbidelli have set competitive times in this session. So Lloyd has just gone P2 with a 1:33.50, so 333 thousandths of a second, so exactly a third of a second slower than Andreas Beckmann. But looking at the timing screen, nobody, it would appear, is going to trouble Andreas, not even his sister. She improves a couple of places to P6. Jessica does a 1:36.55 with her final lap. But Urrutia is still out and doesn't appear to be green at all. And we know that Tom Coronel is stopped, so he won't play any further part. And Josh Files there coming in. So he's settled, it would appear, for P9 in race 1, but he will start alongside Alex Morgan on the front row of the grid for race 2 tomorrow. So that'll be an interesting battle between the two British drivers down to turn 1 for the start of our second race here at Oschersleben. Drivers now though, either in the pits or being recovered or have taken the checkered flag. And so it looks as though with everybody pretty much having completed the session, Andreas Beckmann in car number 19, the target competition Hyundai i30N, will start from pole in today's race 1, ahead of Dan Lloyd on the second spot on the grid, the front row of the grid, and so it'll be Hyundai from Honda. The second row will be Santiago Urrutia in the Audi ahead of Nelson Ponciatici in the Hyundai. Row 3 will be Gilles Magnus in an Audi ahead of alongside Jessica Beckmann in the Hyundai. Then Dominic Baumann in another Hyundai alongside Tom Coronel in the Honda. And then finally, row 5, Josh Files and Alex Morgan. And that'll be the front row of the grid for race 2. And the two drivers who lose out from this session, Luca Engstler, we saw earlier getting things wrong, and Gianni Morbidelli, we haven't actually seen. He's done 2 laps, but not a competitive lap time. Let's get confirmation then. Andreas Beckmann takes his first pole position of the year, was quickest in free practice in, I'm trying to think back, possibly Spa, but he's not been on pole before. Andreas Beckmann will be delighted at that. As I said earlier, he was very confident after the test here in the winter. So Beckmann ahead of Lloyd, Urrutia, Pontiatisi, Magnus, Jessica Beckmann, Baumann, Coronel, Files and Morgan, and Luca Engstler and Gianni Morbidelli 11th and 12th. Then it's the remainder of the cars that didn't go through into Q2. So Kajaya, Comte, Davidovsky, Rieber, Tenka, Brichet, Biel, Luca Filippi. That's your top 20. And then the 8 further cars, the final 4 rows of the grid for both races, remember, because it's only the top 10 that's reversed. And so it's a mixed bag, I think, from qualifying. I think Luca Engstler and Gianni Morbidelli, there is Morbidelli in the foreground of your shot, just coming down off the jacks. So what the problem was, we'll find out after the session. And Luca Engstler, I think his problem fairly obvious. But let's see if Alfredo is on his way, I suspect, to our pole position man and the target competition team, who will be absolutely delighted. They took pole position at the beginning of the year. You'll remember right at the start of the season, they were on pole in Hungaroring with Matto Homola. They were on pole with Josh Files in Hockenheimring. And they're on pole here in Oschersleben with their 3rd driver, Andreas Beckmann. Josh Files, though, no change at the top of the leaderboard because Files still has 194 points. Engstler still has 158 and Brichet still has 154. And all 4, in fact, all 5 of the leading drivers in the Drivers' Championship table not having picked up any points here in qualifying. And the points positions, I should explain, the first 5 in qualifying get 5, 4, 3, 2 and 1. And then in both races, it's points for the top 15 with 40 points on offer for the winner, 35 for second, 30 for third, 27 for fourth and so on. There is Mr. Beckmann. And I don't think, in fact, we have time to catch up with Andreas. So, no, we don't have time, I don't think, to catch up with Andreas, but our congratulations to him, our congratulations to Mr. and Mrs. Beckmann, and we will be back with race 1 from Oschersleben round 9 of TCR Europe. That is this afternoon at 1:30 local time, and fingers crossed we'll have the pleasure of your company then. But for now, it's goodbye.